everyone. Here we are in our new online class. Welcome. I will be posting a YouTube video every week, just commenting on the particular article or articles that we've assigned to read, and we'll be talking about them in the comments. I'll offer some prompts for questions at the end. First of all, I just wanted to say that I already miss our in-person class at this point. It's a really weird, wild ordeal that we're all living through, and I just hope you all are doing well and with your families and, your friends and loved ones. Just having some support right now since it's a very wacky time. With all that said, I'm going to try to keep these videos short. I have aspirations to make them kind of snazzy and add some, clips interspersed with them. But for this first one, we're just starting a conversation, and it is what it is, and it will be like the reality TV, uncut version. So I'm just going through, gonna, try to not edit these at all, and talk to you all just candidly about the article that we've assigned to read. This week I asked you all to read the Dana Boyd piece on social media and social divisions. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about the article and try and hit some key points about what Dana Boyd was discussing in this piece. And, think about how, she's considering the ways that different forms of segregation continue to take shape in our online sphere. And while segregation is now considered obviously unconstitutional in our country, Dana Boyd is really interested in the ways that it continues to present various, borders and obstacles in the ways that it forms within digital culture. So, we might think about how segregation takes shape, when it comes to, for instance, access to resources. So, segregation in its legal form can take shape as private property tax funding public schools in today's day and age. So with that, private property tax will fund public schools in wealthier areas to have more resources like AP classes, various opportunities, for college preparation that students in lower income areas might not have. So we could consider that a contemporary form of segregation. So we talked a little bit in this class already about technological redlining, and that piece that I asked you all to look at that Safiya Noble wrote, that was an excerpt from her book, Algorithms of Oppression. Safiya Noble talks about how, the notion of technological redlining takes shape in the form of technological design, and how technological design reinforces different forms of social inequity. So we could think about, a key example of technological redlining being something like how Pokemon Go's popularity took shape. So thinking about how, Pokemon Go tended to filter people to wealthier white neighborhoods in, attempting to find, the different Pokemons with that game. So with that example, we saw how social inequity was built into the design, so sort of baked into the structure of the game. Just in terms of where it, filtered people to. So Safiya Noble and Dana Boyd, the author of our piece this week, are in conversation in the sense that they're both concerned with how segregation takes shape on the internet. So we can think about how Dana Boyd is actually writing during the Obama years. So thinking about, if we can jog our brains to, it wasn't even that long ago. We could jog our brains back to those times, thinking about how people understood, the internet at that particular time, with how social media contributed so heavily to Barack Obama's successful presidential campaign. They saw social media as, essentially ushering in this new democratic era of, a kind of post-racial politics, considering, we had a black president, and on top of that, social media played this pivotal role in getting Barack Obama elected. So there was a lot of, hope invested in how we understood social media at that time. But with that, Dana Boyd is really interested in kind of challenging those narratives around the holistically democratic potential of the internet, in thinking about, the ways that social media continues to, reinforce different types of inequality despite, those milestones that happened, and challenging this idea of a post-racial society. So, we can even, in thinking about our contemporary context, contemporary as in, the last week, and thinking about challenging the democratic potential of the internet, and challenging this sort of utopian idea of the internet, when we think about just how, the COVID coverage has taken place, and, the ways that we're experiencing such information overload when it comes to so many details surrounding the virus. And there's a lot to be said in how it's, facilitating access to information, but it's also, compounding a lot of anxiety about the virus. And, while it's connecting people amidst social isolation, amidst, this pressure to distance ourselves socially, and the necessity of, socially distancing ourselves, it is at the same time, it could be argued, facilitating a kind of divisiveness between us, and, how we are engaging with one another in terms of social media. Like, is it actually facilitating greater forms of intimacy, deeper friendships, and whatnot? Or is it, sort of facilitating a kind of panic between one another in how much people are engaging with it? So it's once again thinking about those pros and cons, the costs and affordances of social media, as opposed to thinking about it in this holistically democratic way. But yeah, so thinking more about, what Dana Boyd is, pointing to when it comes to the ways that we do tend to understand technology, and how we impose, various forms of hope onto that technology. That, when new technologies emerge, like, whether it's an app, whether it's a new platform and whatnot, there tends to be a lot of hope invested in those technologies. Like, this is going to be the technology that really saves the day in some way, when we know that it's much more complicated than, the form of technology just, essentially saving the day. So with that, Dana Boyd points to, thinking about impact versus intention when it does come to technology. So, we think about how an app creator can have the best of intentions in, wanting their particular form of technology to really facilitate some kind of, social equity, senses of togetherness and whatnot. Yet sometimes the impact of that technology diverges from the intention of it. To think about this in a practical way, that's a non-internet example of this, is, thinking about the ways that, even the Pulse bus system functioned in Richmond, or any kind of new bus system that takes shape in a city, that there can be these great plans for it, these, this vision of the form of public transportation really connecting people and, facilitating new opportunities. But then in practice, because of that, city planners, sense of being potentially blind to, all of the various factors that need to go into actually facilitating true social equity, they, they may create a system that leaves people behind when, it comes to transportation, like literally leaves people behind, doesn't get them from point A to point B if they're living in a lower income area. So that's an example of, a particular vision or the intention of something diverging from the impact of it. But we can also think about, various forms of technology that have also had this, sort of conflict between impact and intention. So thinking about Siri not being able to recognize different types of accents that, wasn't the intention of the creators, but in effect, different people are not able to use the technology if they had some kind of accent that became undetectable to Siri. We can also think about the Microsoft facial recognition technology, that it wasn't able to recognize darker skin tones. So that definitely emerged as a problem with the facial recognition technology. And it may have not necessarily been the intention of the creators, but it was something that was overlooked and, became a blind spot for the creators. Beverly Tatum, that Dana Boyd refers to, she talks about how self-segregation can actually be a coping mechanism for enduring different forms of systemic racism. So organizing different groups of kids, so self-organizing in the sense of who do you gravitate to hanging out with in the cafeteria, those forms of just sort of camaraderie can indicate sort of uh, organizing oneself along racial and ethnic lines to create senses of community and belonging when you're facing different, forces of alienation, sort of, isolating or hostile forces within a school that, are fundamentally racist in various ways. So, we could think about this taking shape as, in high schools, kids of color tending to get punished for, various types of activities that, we may see, white kids not receiving the same kind of treatment. That sort of treatment can, indicate a kind of hostility within the public school system that kids of color need to navigate, and how they can form senses of community and belonging in order to navigate systemic racism. So that in and of itself, functioning as a form of self-segregation, it can definitely be, in other words, a form of self-preservation in that sense. So that does also make me think back to our class conversation when you all brought up the ways that, self-segregation can take shape in, even the U of R dining hall, and thinking about, who sits with who tends to find community with who. It can just reflect the kind of gravitation towards befriending like-minded individuals, which Dana Boyd points out is understood in sociology as homophily. So it's, this idea of, you move towards the people that you feel like can offer you the sense of camaraderie that you're looking for. And, sometimes that's just looking for, people that look like you. Thinking about also the ways that media use tends to perpetuate different forms of segregation. So we might think about how social capital comes into play with this. So thinking about LinkedIn is a good example. If you consider the ways that different people might navigate LinkedIn, you can join LinkedIn, and then maybe because of your lived experience with various people that you can have connections to, perhaps through your family, perhaps through your friends that have those connections, you could have a leg up, as opposed to somebody that may be starting from scratch, went to school in a lower income area. So thinking about, those various forms of navigating social media, we tend to find connections that reinforce our friend groups or reinforce the people that we're used to in real life. But yeah, so I will post some questions for further discussion below this video, and thanks to you all for your attention, and I look forward to talking more.